My family laughed in my face and uninvited me from the annual reunion, claiming my career made me too boring for their glamorous circle. So, I took my massive new promotion, booked their dream venue, and banned them forever. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The rhythmic, agonizingly slow ticking of the wall clock was the only sound in my bedroom, a stark contrast to the pounding pressure in my head. I was 32 years old, completely bedridden, and fighting a severe, lingering bout of pneumonia that had completely knocked the wind out of my sails for the past 3 weeks. My bedroom, usually my sanctuary of carefully curated architectural magazines and drafting blueprints, felt like a stagnant prison cell. The air was thick with the scent of eucalyptus and stale cough drops. My chest ached with every breath, a heavy, rattling reminder of how vulnerable I had become. I had been working 90-hour weeks at the firm, pushing myself to the absolute brink of physical and mental exhaustion to secure the lead architectural designer position. My body had finally given out, forcing me into this mandated exile of soft blankets and agonizing silence. I was fragile, running a low-grade fever, and desperately longing for the comfort of my family. I had been looking forward to the annual summer family retreat, a sprawling, lavish vacation we took every year to reconnect. I had already paid my $2,000 share for the sprawling Tuscan villa we were supposed to rent next month. It was the one lighthouse in the dark fog of my illness, a beacon of rest and familial warmth. Then my phone vibrated on the nightstand, the harsh buzzing grating against the quiet room. The screen illuminated, flashing Aunt Alexa's name. I coughed, a deep, painful sound that rattled my ribs, and blindly reached for the phone. I fumbled with the screen before bringing the cool glass to my flushed cheek. "Hello, Aunt Alexa," I croaked, my voice sounding like gravel being crushed under a heavy tire. "Oh, Riley, sweetheart." Aunt Alexa's voice fluttered through the speaker, carrying that specific, syrupy tone she always used right before delivering bad news. It was a tone wrapped in faux concern, dripping with condescension. "You sound absolutely dreadful, honey, just awful." "I'm surviving," I rasped, trying to force a weak chuckle. "The doctor said another week of antibiotics and I should be cleared to travel. I'm just so excited for Italy, Aunt Alexa. I really need the sunshine. I need to see you all." There was a long, suffocating pause on the other end of the line. The kind of silence that instantly makes your stomach drop and the hairs on your arms stand up. I could hear the faint, muffled sound of laughter in the background. Someone was with her. It sounded exactly like my cousin, Camilla. "Well, Riley, about Italy," Aunt Alexa began, her voice suddenly brisk and businesslike, the syrupy sweetness evaporating instantly. "We've been talking. Camilla, your uncle, and we just don't think it's a good idea for you to come this year." The words didn't make sense. My fever-addled brain struggled to process the syllables. "What? What do you mean it's not a good idea? I already paid my portion. I'll be off the medication in 5 days." "It's not just the illness, darling," Aunt Alexa sighed, sounding immensely put upon by the mere prospect of explaining herself to me. "It's the energy. This trip is supposed to be a high-vibration, glamorous getaway. Camilla is bringing a few of her influencer colleagues to do a brand trip collaboration at the villa. They need a dynamic, aesthetic environment. And you, well, you've just been so focused on your little building projects, and now you're sick, and frankly, you're just a bit of a downer lately." "A downer?" I whispered, the words burning my throat. I sat up slightly, the room spinning around me. "Aunt Alexa, I've been working myself to the bone. I haven't been a downer, I've been exhausted. And I need a break. My room is already booked." "Actually, about that," Aunt Alexa said, her voice dropping to a hurried whisper. "We've already given your suite to one of Camilla's photographer friends. He needs the natural light for her campaign shoots. We will refund your money eventually, of course, when Camilla gets her brand deal payout. But you have to understand, you just don't fit the vibe of this trip anymore, Riley. You're always stressing about work or complaining about being tired." You just aren't party material, and Camilla really needs this to be perfect for her career. Before I could even formulate a response, before I could scream or cry or demand my money back, the muffled laughter in the background grew louder. I heard Camilla's voice, clear as a bell, say, "Just tell her T." "Oh, go back to sleep, Mom. She's ruining the mood." "I have to go, sweetie. Get well soon," Aunt Alexa chirped, and the line went dead. I sat there in the dim light, the dial tone ringing in my ear, the cold realization washing over my feverish skin. I had funded their holidays, supported their endeavors, and the moment I was weak and no longer useful as a silent wallet, I was discarded so a photographer could have my window. The betrayal was worse than the illness itself. The immediate aftermath was a blur of physical agony and emotional devastation. I dropped the phone onto the duvet, my hands trembling uncontrollably. A cold sweat broke out across my forehead, mixing with the hot tears that suddenly sprang to my eyes. I couldn't breathe, and this time, it had absolutely nothing to do with the fluid in my lungs. It was a suffocating, heavy pressure sitting directly on my chest, a profound sense of abandonment that seemed to swallow all the oxygen in the room. I reached for my phone again, my fingers clumsy and numb. I opened my text messages, navigating to my thread with Camilla. The last message I had sent her was 3 days ago, a link to a beautiful restaurant in Florence I wanted us to try. She had left it on read. I typed furiously, ignoring the typos caused by my shaking hands. "Riley, did Aunt Alexa just seriously kick me out of the villa? The villa I paid $2,000 for, so you can bring a photographer." I watched the screen, my heart pounding a frantic, painful rhythm against my ribs. 3 gray dots appeared. She was typing. Then they disappeared. Then they appeared again. It was a calculated, agonizing wait. Finally, her response popped up on the screen. "Camilla, OMG Riley, don't be so dramatic. You've been so sick anyway, and honestly, you're just not party material right now. It would totally bring down the vibe for my brand partners. Rest up. We'll bring you a magnet or something." A magnet? She was stealing my $2,000 vacation, giving my room to a stranger, and offering me a refrigerator magnet as compensation. I stared at the screen until the glowing words burned into my retinas. The sheer audacity, the callous cruelty of her words was staggering. She wasn't just uninviting me, she was mocking me. She was laughing at my exhaustion, trivializing my career, and treating me like an embarrassing blemish on her perfectly curated life. Just as a sob tore its way out of my bruised throat, the heavy oak door of my apartment clicked open. I heard the familiar, comforting sound of heavy boots hitting the hardwood floor of the hallway. It was Olivia. Olivia was my fiercely loyal best friend and one of the brilliant structural engineers at my firm. We had spent the last 5 years climbing the corporate ladder together, surviving brutal deadlines and sexist contractors side by side. She was the one person in my life who truly understood the weight of the work I had been doing. "Delivery," Olivia called out, her voice echoing down the hall. "I come bearing spicy chicken noodle soup, heavy-duty decongestants, and the latest gossip from the site manager." She walked into my bedroom, carrying a large brown paper bag, a bright, supportive smile on her face. But the moment her eyes landed on me, her smile vanished instantly. She dropped the bag onto the armchair and rushed to the side of my bed. "Riley, oh my God, what happened? Is it your breathing? Do I need to call an ambulance?" She grabbed my shoulders, her eyes scanning my flushed, tear-streaked face with genuine terror. I couldn't speak. I simply handed her my unlocked phone. Olivia took it, her eyes darting across the screen as she read the messages. I watched the transformation on her face. The initial confusion morphed into shock, and then a dark, protective fury settled over her features. Her jaw clenched tight, and her knuckles turned white as she gripped the edges of the phone case. "They kicked you out of the trip you paid for," Olivia stated, her voice dangerously low and quiet. "It wasn't a question. Because you are sick, and because you work too hard, and they gave your room to a stranger." I nodded, wiping my nose with the back of my hand, feeling pathetic and small. "Aunt Alexa said I'm a downer. Camilla said I'm not party material. Olivia slowly handed the phone back to me, her eyes blazing with an intensity I rarely saw. Riley, she said, her voice steady and commanding, these people have been using you for years. They bleed you dry for your money and your generosity, and they mock you behind your back because you actually work for a living while they play pretend on the internet. This is unforgivable. I know, I whispered, staring down at my hands. I'm too tired to fight them. They always do this. They always win. Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, reaching out to hold my trembling hands in her warm, steady ones. You are going to rest. You are going to take your medicine, and you are going to get better. And then, she paused, her eyes narrowing as a slow, sharp smile crept onto her face. We are going to fix this. Because you are not a victim, Riley. You are the smartest woman I know. I looked at her, the spark of anger finally beginning to ignite beneath the heavy blanket of my sorrow. She was right. I had spent my entire life being the quiet, accommodating, boring cousin. I let them walk all over me because I valued family peace over my own dignity. But as I lay there, looking at the cruel text from Camilla, something fundamental shifted inside my chest. The fever seemed to burn away the last remnants of my naive loyalty to them. They thought I was weak. They thought I was just a tired, boring architect who would quietly accept their abuse and fade into the background. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. Lying in the quiet dimness of my room, staring at the ceiling long after Olivia had left, I found myself drowning in a bitter sea of memories. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a lifetime of systemic disrespect. I had spent the last decade building a career from the ground up, sacrificing my weekends, my evenings, and my youth to master architectural design. And for what? To be the family's secret, silent bank account. Whenever someone needed a bailout, I was the first person they called. 3 years ago, when Aunt Alexa's transmission blew on her luxury SUV, a car she couldn't afford but insisted on leasing for appearances, who paid the $4,000 repair bill so she wouldn't lose face at her country club? I did. I pulled it straight from my savings account without a second thought, believing that family helped family. And then there was Camilla. Camilla, the self-proclaimed lifestyle and wellness consultant, a title she invented to mask the fact that she was 30 years old and still entirely financially dependent on her mother and, tangentially, on me. 2 years ago, she decided she was going to launch a high-end, organic skincare boutique online. She needed seed money for inventory, website design, and marketing. Aunt Alexa had cornered me at Thanksgiving, crying about how this was Camilla's big break, her chance to finally make something of herself. I had given Camilla a $10,000 loan. No interest, no strict repayment plan, just a check handed over with a smile and a hug. The boutique lasted exactly 4 months before she got bored of fulfilling orders and decided to pivot to being a travel influencer. I never saw a single dime of that money returned. Whenever I gently brought it up, I was met with eye rolls and dramatic sighs. God, Riley, you're so obsessed with money, Camilla would say, waving her perfectly manicured hand dismissively. You make plenty at your boring desk job. Let me live my truth. My mind flashed back to last Christmas, the memory sharp and biting. Aunt Alexa had hosted dinner at her pristine, over-decorated house. I had arrived exhausted, having worked a 14-hour shift the day before to finalize a massive commercial bid for the firm. I was wearing a simple, comfortable cashmere sweater and slacks, craving nothing more than a warm meal and familial comfort. Camilla had descended the stairs an hour late, looking like she was stepping onto a red carpet. She wore a skin-tight designer dress that I knew cost more than my monthly rent, her hair blown out into impossible, glossy waves. Her makeup was flawless, a heavy, contoured mask of perfection that completely hid the cruel set of her mouth. She had glided into the dining room, a glass of champagne already in hand, and immediately zeroed in on me. Her eyes, cold and calculating, raked over my simple outfit. "Oh, Riley," she had purred, her voice carrying across the silent room, ensuring everyone was listening. "You look so comfortable. It's so brave of you to just completely give up on fashion like that. I guess when you spend your life staring at blueprints in a dusty office, you just lose the will to try. Aunt Alexa had chuckled, a soft, encouraging sound. Now, Camilla, be nice. Riley works very hard at her little building projects. I know she does, Mom, Camilla had smiled, a razor-thin, disingenuous stretching of her lips. She leaned in closer to me, the overwhelming scent of her expensive perfume making my nose twitch. But seriously, Riles, what are you even doing with your life? You have no husband, no social presence, no aesthetic. You just work, sleep, and pay taxes. Are you getting a bonus this year? Because honestly, you need to use it to hire a stylist, or at least buy a personality. I had sat there in silence, my cheeks burning with humiliation as the rest of the table awkwardly picked at their food, no one daring to defend me against the family's golden child. I had swallowed my pride, smiled tightly, and changed the subject. I always changed the subject. I always kept the peace. But not anymore. The pneumonia had physically weak. End me, but the fever seemed to have burned away my tolerance for their abuse. As I lay in my bed, thinking about my $2,000 currently funding Camilla's influencer photo shoot, the sadness evaporated entirely, replaced by a cold, hard, and deeply focused anger. I reached for my laptop sitting on the nightstand. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I logged into my secure company portal. I had an unread email from the senior partners of my firm, an email I had been too sick to fully process when I received it 2 days ago. I opened the message and read the words again, letting the reality of my situation finally sink in. Dear Riley, following the unprecedented success of the Downtown Commercial District project, the board has voted unanimously. We are thrilled to officially offer you the position of senior partner and lead regional director, effective immediately. This promotion includes a comprehensive equity stake in the firm and a signing bonus of. I stared at the number on the screen. It was a staggering, life-altering amount of money. It was more money than Camilla and Aunt Alexa had seen in their entire lives. They thought I was a boring, tired worker bee. They thought my dedication to my career was a joke, a pathetic excuse for a lack of a vibrant life. They didn't realize that while they were busy curating fake lives for the internet, I had been quietly building an empire. I closed the laptop, a dark, dangerous smile spreading across my face in the quiet room. They wanted a glamorous party. They were going to get one. By the end of the week, the fever had finally broken, leaving behind a profound, crystalline clarity. The suffocating weight in my chest was gone, replaced by an expansive, driving energy that I hadn't felt in years. I returned to the architectural firm on a Tuesday morning. The sprawling, open-concept office, usually a cacophony of ringing phones and drafting plotters, felt different today. It felt like my kingdom. Olivia was waiting by my desk, holding a steaming cup of artisan green tea. She took one look at my face, at the sharp set of my jaw and the tailored, commanding navy suit I had chosen instead of my usual comfortable slacks, and a slow, brilliant smile spread across her face. You accepted it, Olivia said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I signed the digital contract last night, I replied, setting my leather briefcase onto the glass table. I am officially the senior partner and lead regional director. But more importantly, Olivia, I am done being the foundation everyone else steps on to keep their fragile houses from collapsing. It is time for a demolition. We retreated to my new corner office, a breathtaking space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. As I sat behind the massive oak desk, I felt a surge of absolute power. I opened my laptop and pulled up the mental blueprint of my revenge. They want a high-vibration, glamorous event? I asked, looking across the desk at Olivia. I am going to throw the most spectacular, exclusive promotion gala this city has ever seen, and I know exactly where. Olivia's eyes widened. You don't mean? The Sterling Botanical Conservatory, I confirmed, typing the name into my search bar. The conservatory was the crown jewel of the city's event spaces. It was an architectural marvel of sweeping glass arches, exotic indoor gardens, and cascading waterfalls. It was also, crucially, Camilla's absolute dream venue. For the past 5 years, she had talked incessantly about hosting her 30th birthday party there. She had created vision boards, Pinterest folders, and even fake guest lists. But at $30,000 just to walk through the doors, it was a fantasy she could never afford, no matter how much she begged Aunt Alexa. "I am booking the Grand Orchid Pavilion," I declared, my fingers flying over the keys to submit the inquiry. "I am inviting the entire extended family, Uncle Thomas, Aunt Beatrice, all the cousins who have actually been kind to me. I'm flying them in. I'm putting them up in 5-star hotels. I am inviting the firm's partners, the city council members I work with, and every influential person in my network." "And Camilla and Aunt Alexa?" Olivia asked, a wicked gleam in her eye. "They will not receive an invitation," I said smoothly. "But they will see every single second of it on social media. However, before I celebrate, I need to clean up my balance sheets." As a newly minted senior partner, I had immediate access to the firm's elite retainer of corporate lawyers and forensic accountants. I picked up my desk phone and dialed the extension for Marcus, our lead financial investigator. If I was going to cut Aunt Alexa and Camilla out of my life, I needed to know exactly how deep their deception ran. "Marcus," I said when he answered, "I need a personal favor. 3 years ago, I wrote a $10,000 check to an LLC registered under my cousin's name, Camilla. It was supposedly for an organic skincare boutique. I need you to trace that LLC, pull the public tax records, and tell me exactly where my seed money went. I want every receipt, every transfer, every hidden ledger." "Give me 48 hours, Riley," Marcus replied, his tone all business. "I'll dissect it down to the last penny." The trap was set. I was no longer the tired, accommodating cousin. I was the architect of their unmaking, and I was designing it perfectly. 2 days later, my office phone rang. The caller ID flashed Aunt Alexa's cell phone number. I let it ring 3 times, taking a slow, centering breath before pressing the speaker button. "Riley, darling?" Aunt Alexa's voice boomed through the office, dripping with that familiar, synthetic sweetness. She sounded entirely unbothered, as if she hadn't just kicked me out of a vacation I funded while I was battling pneumonia. "How are you feeling, sweetie? Are you finally getting some rest?" "I am feeling completely revitalized, Aunt Alexa," I said, my voice dangerously calm and perfectly level. I leaned back in my leather chair, tapping a gold pen against my notepad. "In fact, I've never had so much clarity in my life. To what do I owe the pleasure?" There was a brief hesitation on the line, a slight falter in her practiced rhythm. "Well, honey, Camilla and I are just finalizing the itinerary for the Tuscan villa next week, and there's a tiny little hiccup. Camilla's photographer, Julian, he needs a drone for the aerial brand shots, and the rental fee is just a bit outside of Camilla's budget right now. Since you got your vacation refunded in spirit, we thought it would be a beautiful gesture if you sponsored the drone rental. It's only $1,500. It would really show Camilla that you support her career." I didn't yell, I didn't cry. I simply smiled, a cold, hard expression that didn't reach my eyes. "Support her career," I repeated, tasting the sheer audacity of the words. I pulled up the encrypted PDF Marcus had emailed me that morning. "You mean her career as the CEO of Luminous Bloom Skincare?" "Exactly," Aunt Alexa chirped, completely missing the frost in my tone. "She works so hard, Riley. You know how it is." "I do know how it is, Aunt Alexa," I said, leaning forward. Which is why I had my firm's forensic accountant look into Luminous Bloom LLC yesterday. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. The background noise of whatever upscale cafe she was sitting in seemed to vanish. "What are you talking about?" Aunt Alexa's voice was suddenly tight, the syrupy coating completely gone. "Why would you do that?" "Because I like to know the structural integrity of my investments," I replied smoothly. "And guess what I found? Luminous Bloom LLC was legally dissolved exactly 4 weeks after I handed Camilla that $10,000 check. No inventory was ever purchased. No website domain was ever registered. But do you know what was purchased? Riley, this is highly inappropriate. 2 first-class tickets to a luxury wellness resort in Chelum, I continued, speaking over her weak protests. A week-long stay in an oceanfront cabana, and roughly $3,000 spent on a service that artificially inflates social media followers. My money didn't fund a business, Aunt Alexa. It funded a vacation and a fabricated ego. You have no right to snoop into our private affairs. The lines suddenly crackled, and Camilla's shrill, panicked voice replaced her mother's. She must have snatched the phone. You gave me that money. It was a gift. You're just jealous because my life is beautiful and aesthetic, and you're trapped in a dusty office with no friends. It was a business loan, Camilla, documented in the memo line of the cashier's check you deposited. I corrected her, my voice turning to ice. And my life is anything but dusty. I am calling in the loan. If I do not have $10,000 wired to my account by the end of the month, my legal team will file a formal suit for fraud. Have a wonderful time in Italy. I hear the lighting is fantastic. I pressed the button, disconnecting the call. My heart was beating steadily. There was no guilt, no anxiety. Only the pure, satisfying click of a puzzle piece snapping firmly into place. The first pillar had been knocked down. By Friday, the heavy, gold foil-stamped invitations for my promotion gala were in the mail. They were masterpieces of design, enclosed in velvet envelopes and sealed with the architectural firm's wax crest. The text invited the recipient to an exclusive, black-tie celebration honoring my elevation to senior partner, held at the Grand Orchid Pavilion of the Sterling Botanical Conservatory. I had strategically ensured that Uncle Thomas, Aunt Beatrice, and my cousins who lived out of state received theirs first. I also included a handwritten note to each of them, offering to cover their flights and hotel accommodati. I wanted the venue packed with people who actually loved me, and I wanted the noise of the celebration to be deafening. It took exactly 48 hours for the fallout to begin. My phone started buzzing on Sunday morning. It was Uncle Thomas. Riley, my goodness, kiddo. His warm, boisterous voice echoed through the speaker. A senior partner? The Sterling Conservatory? Your Aunt Beatrice is already out buying a new gown. We are so incredibly proud of you. Thank you, Uncle Thomas, I smiled, genuinely touched by his enthusiasm. I can't wait to celebrate with you. Your Aunt Alexa just called me, actually, Uncle Thomas continued, a note of confusion creeping into his voice. She sounded completely unhinged. She was asking if we got an invitation to something. When I told her about your gala, she started screaming that you were a vindictive liar and that Camilla was having a panic attack. Riley, what on earth is going on? Before I could explain, my office line beeped. It was Marcus, the investigator. I asked Uncle Thomas to hold and clicked over. Riley, Marcus said, his voice unusually grave. I kept digging after we found the Chelum receipts. I started looking into their current credit lines to see if they even have the liquidity to pay you back that 10 grand. And, I asked, a cold knot forming in my stomach. They don't, they are drowning in debt, but that's not the worst part. Marcus paused, the sound of papers shuffling coming through the receiver. Aunt Alexa leases a 2024 Mercedes-Benz luxury SUV. Her credit is abysmal, so she couldn't secure the lease on her own. Riley, your name is on the guarantor paperwork. Your social security number, your employment history, and a signature that looks remarkably like yours, but was undeniably forged. The floor seemed to drop out from beneath me. Stealing $10,000 for a vacation was awful, but identity theft, committing felony fraud to maintain the illusion of wealth, that was a different stratosphere of betrayal. They hadn't just used me, they had actively jeopardized my financial future, my credit, and my security clearance for my firm. I clicked back over to Uncle Thomas. Uncle Thomas, I said, my voice shaking with a potent mixture of rage and absolute resolve. Aunt Alexa and Camilla have been lying to the entire family for years, and I am going to prove it. I need you to make sure every single invited family member is at that party next Saturday. Everything is going to be brought into the light." 10 minutes later, my personal cell phone erupted. It was a barrage of text messages from Camilla. "Camilla, you psychopath. How dare you book the conservatory? Camilla, that is MY Dream Venue. You knew that. Camilla, you are intentionally trying to humiliate me. Mom is hyperventilating. You better send our invitations right now, or I will post all over social media about how toxic and abusive you are." I stared at the messages, watching the desperate, flailing attempts of a manipulator losing control. She thought she could still bully me into submission. She thought her empty threats of social media exposure still held weight. I didn't reply to the texts. Instead, I forwarded the forged Mercedes-Benz lease agreement to Aunt Alexa's email with a single subject line: "See you at the party." The foundation was completely shattered. The house was coming down, and I was going to make sure everyone had a front row seat to the collapse. The evening of the promotion gala arrived, painting the city skyline in brilliant shades of twilight purple and deep, shimmering gold. The Sterling Botanical Conservatory was a breathtaking marvel of Victorian-inspired architecture and modern engineering. Its massive, sweeping glass arches vaulted high into the night sky, illuminated from within by thousands of warm, cascading fairy lights that made the entire structure glow like a lantern against the darkness. Inside the Grand Orchid Pavilion, the air was perfectly climate-controlled, carrying the intoxicating, rich scent of rare blooming orchids, damp earth, and expensive catering. A live string quartet played a sophisticated, modern classical arrangement in the corner, their music floating effortlessly over the gentle hum of polite conversation and clinking champagne flutes. I stood near the center of the room, surrounded by a vibrant sea of people who genuinely respected and cared for me. I wore a custom-tailored, floor-length emerald green gown that made me feel like an absolute force of nature. For the first time in my entire life, I wasn't hiding in the background in a comfortable sweater, trying to shrink myself down to make others comfortable. I was the center of attention, the guest of honor, and I felt a profound, radiant sense of ownership over my own life. Olivia stood faithfully by my side, looking stunning in a sharp black tuxedo jacket and slacks, holding a glass of sparkling water. Every senior partner from my architectural firm was in attendance, shaking my hand and praising the massive downtown commercial district project that had secured my promotion. More importantly, my real family was there. Uncle Thomas, Aunt Beatrice, and a dozen of my cousins who had flown in from across the country were marveling at the venue, their faces glowing with genuine pride and happiness for me. "I have to admit, Riley," Uncle Thomas said, walking over and wrapping me in a warm, bear-like hug. "When you said you were throwing a party, I didn't expect a royal coronation. This place is unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. You have outdone yourself, kiddo." "Thank you, Uncle Thomas," I smiled, squeezing his hand. "I wanted to share this with the people who have always supported my career, the people who know how much sweat and tears went into those blueprints." He looked at me, a deep sincerity softening his weathered features. "We are so proud of you, and I want to apologize, Riley. For all the years we just let your Aunt Alexa dictate the family dynamic. We knew she was hard on you, but we just wanted to keep the peace. We were wrong. Seeing what she and Camilla have done, it's unforgivable." Before I could respond, a sudden, sharp commotion echoed from the grand entrance of the pavilion. The heavy, mahogany double doors, usually manned by 2 stoic security guards, were suddenly thrown open with a violent shove. The elegant music of the string quartet faltered and screeched to a halt as the musicians lowered their bows in shock. The gentle hum of conversation instantly evaporated, replaced by a tense, suffocating silence that swept across the room like a cold wind. Standing in the entryway, looking entirely out of place and absolutely furious, were Aunt Alexa and Camilla. Camilla was wearing a haphazardly thrown-together cocktail dress, her usually flawless makeup looking slightly smudged and frantic. Aunt Alexa stood beside her, her face flushed a blotchy, angry crimson, clutching her designer handbag like a weapon. They looked like a storm cloud invading a greenhouse. The two security guards immediately stepped forward, their hands raised in a firm, professional gesture to stop them from advancing any further into the private event. "Take your hands off me," Camilla shrieked, her voice echoing shrilly off the glass ceiling. She aggressively shoved the security guard's arm away, her eyes scanning the room wildly until they locked onto me. "Riley, how could you do this? How could you book my venue?" I didn't panic. My heart didn't race. I simply took a slow, deliberate sip of my champagne, handed the glass to Olivia, and began to walk toward the entrance. The entire room parted for me, a silent audience watching the architect approach the demolition site. Uncle Thomas stepped right behind me, his posture rigid and protective, while the senior partners of my firm watched with a mixture of shock and sheer fascination. "Let them through," I instructed the security guards, my voice perfectly calm and carrying clearly across the silent room. "They won't be staying long." The guards stepped aside, and Camilla stormed forward, stopping just a few feet away from me. She looked around at the opulent floral arrangements, the high-end catering stations, and the wealthy, influential guests staring back at her. Her face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated jealousy and rage. "You did this just to spite me," Camilla hissed, her voice trembling with indignation. "You knew the Sterling Conservatory was my dream venue for my 30th birthday. You knew I had vision boards for this exact room. You purposely planned this to humiliate me and ruin my brand." "Your brand?" I asked, raising a single eyebrow, my voice echoing clearly for every single guest to hear. "You mean Luminous Bloom Skincare, the company that doesn't exist. The company you used to steal $10,000 from me to fund a luxury vacation in Chelum." A collective gasp rippled through the gathered family members. Aunt Beatrice brought a hand to her mouth in shock. "Keep your voice down, Riley," Aunt Alexa hissed, finally stepping forward, trying to maintain her matriarchal authority in a room where she had absolutely none. She tried to force a patronizing, scolding tone, but her voice was shaking. "This is a family matter. We are not going to air our dirty laundry in front of your little work friends. You sent me a very confusing email about a car lease, and we are here to clear up this misunderstanding." "It isn't a misunderstanding, Aunt Alexa," I said, my tone turning to absolute steel. I didn't lower my voice, I projected it. "And these aren't just my work friends. These are the senior partners of my firm, including our legal counsel. And standing right behind me is Uncle Thomas and the rest of the family you have lied to for years." I reached into the small clutch purse I was holding and pulled out a neatly folded piece of paper. I slowly unfolded it, holding it up or her to see. It was the printed copy of the Mercedes-Benz lease agreement. "You called me a downer," I said, my eyes locking onto Aunt Alexa's terrified gaze. "You told me I wasn't party material. You kicked me out of a family vacation that I paid for while I was suffering from pneumonia because my exhaustion was ruining your aesthetic. You mocked my career for a decade, but behind my back, you used the very career you mocked to commit identity theft." "Identity theft?" Uncle Thomas boomed, stepping forward, his face turning a dangerous shade of red. "Alexa, what is she talking about?" "She forged my signature, Uncle Thomas," I explained calmly, never taking my eyes off my aunt. "Aunt Alexa's credit is so ruined from her obsessive need to maintain a fake lifestyle that she couldn't lease her luxury SUV. So, she stole my social security number, used my employment history at the firm, and forged my signature as a guarantor on a $60,000 vehicle. She committed a felony." The silence in the room was absolute, heavy, and suffocating. The polished facade Aunt Alexa had maintained for 60 years instantly shattered into a million irreparable pieces. She looked around wildly, seeing the disgust and horror on the faces of her siblings, her nieces, and her nephews. I was going to pay it back," Aunt Alexa stammered, tears of sheer panic finally spilling over her cheeks. "It was just a temporary fix. Camilla needed me to drive a nice car for her influencer videos. I couldn't drop her off at high-end events in a used sedan. It would ruin her image. Tell them, Camilla. Tell them it was for your career. Aunt Alexa turned to her daughter, desperately seeking an ally, seeking someone to share the blame. But the manipulated dynamic between them completely fractured under the weight of the public exposure. Camilla's eyes widened in horror, realizing that her mother was trying to anchor her to a sinking ship. The selfish, self-preservation instincts that had defined her entire life immediately took over. "Don't drag me into your crimes," Camilla screamed, physically backing away from her mother as if she were contagious. "I didn't tell you to forge her signature. I didn't tell you to steal her identity. You did that on your own. You're a criminal. I just wanted the car for the videos. I didn't know you broke the law. You ruined everything." "I did everything for you," Aunt Alexa shrieked back, her voice cracking with hysteria, completely abandoning any sense of decorum. "I funded your fake businesses. I bought your followers. I kicked Riley out of the villa for you. And this is how you repay me, by abandoning me when I get caught." "You're pathetic," Camilla yelled, tears streaming down her face, her aesthetic completely destroyed. "My brand is ruined because of you." The audience watched in stunned silence as the two women turned on each other like cornered animals, exposing the deeply toxic, parasitic nature of their relationship. They were completely unmasking themselves, revealing that underneath the designer clothes and the curated social media posts, there was nothing but greed, manipulation, and profound insecurity. "Enough," Uncle Thomas's voice thundered through the pavilion, silencing their bickering instantly. He walked past me, stopping right in front of Aunt Alexa. He looked at his sister not with anger, but with a profound, final disgust. "For years, we have tiptoed around your demands, Alexa," Uncle Thomas said, his voice heavy with finality. "We let you dictate the terms of this family because we didn't want the drama. We watched you belittle Riley, and to our great shame, we did nothing. But this, stealing from her, forging her name, you have crossed a line that can never, ever be uncrossed." He turned to the rest of the gathered family members. "As far as I am concerned, and I speak for my family, we are done. You are no longer welcome at our holidays. You are no longer welcome in our homes. You have poisoned this family for the last time." Aunt Alexa let out a loud, dramatic sob, falling to her knees on the polished marble floor, burying her face in her hands. Camilla stood frozen, realizing that her entire safety net, her entire source of funding and social standing, had just vanished into thin air. I looked at them, kneeling and trembling in the center of the beautiful venue they had so desperately coveted. I felt no pity. I felt no anger. I just felt clean. "Security," I said, my voice echoing clearly in the quiet room. "Please escort these two women off the premises. If they resist, call the police." The two guards stepped forward, firmly grasping Aunt Alexa and Camilla by the arms. There was no more screaming. There were no more threats. The fight had been completely drained out of them. They were led out through the heavy mahogany doors, leaving behind a profound, peaceful silence. I turned back to the room, taking a deep breath of the orchid-scented air. Uncle Tom. As placed a warm, steady hand on my shoulder, giving it a reassuring squeeze. I looked at Olivia, who raised her glass of sparkling water to me in a silent, triumphant toast. "Now," I smiled, looking out at the faces of the people who truly mattered. "Let's get this party started. Please, everyone, enjoy the champagne." The string quartet immediately struck up a lively, joyous tune, and the room erupted into applause. The days following the gala were a whirlwind of decisive, final action. I did not hesitate, and I did not let the lingering ghosts of familial guilt slow my hand. On Monday morning, sitting at my new, expansive desk overlooking the city, I met with my firm's lead corporate attorney. I handed over the forged lease agreement, Marcus's forensic accounting report regarding the stolen $10,000, and every threatening text message Camilla had ever sent me. We filed formal police reports for identity theft and felony fraud against Aunt Alexa. We simultaneously filed a civil suit against Camilla for the unreturned business loan. The legal hammer fell with a swift, merciless precision. By Wednesday, the reality of their situation had become a public spectacle. The dealership, alerted to the fraudulent guarantor signature by my legal team, immediately repossessed the luxury Mercedes-Benz SUV right out of Aunt Alexa's country club parking lot. I heard through the family grapevine that she had tried to stage a dramatic fainting spell to stop the tow truck driver, but it had only resulted in her being temporarily suspended from the club for causing a public disturbance. Camilla's world collapsed just as spectacularly. Uncle Thomas, true to his word, had called every single extended family member and explicitly detailed the crimes. The endless stream of financial bailouts from aunts, uncles, and grandparents immediately dried up. Forced to face the reality of my civil suit, Camilla tried to launch a tearful, victim-playing narrative on her social media platforms, claiming her family was trying to destroy her light. Unfortunately for her, Olivia had meticulously saved screenshots of the cruel, mocking text messages Camilla had sent me while I was bedridden with pneumonia. Olivia, utilizing a burner account, quietly leaked those screenshots into the comment sections of Camilla's videos. The internet, famously unforgiving of hypocrites, turned on her instantly. Her sponsors dropped her, her artificially inflated follower count plummeted, and within 2 weeks, her lifestyle and wellness pages were completely deleted. She was forced to get a minimum wage retail job just to pay for her own groceries, a reality check that was long overdue. They were financially ruined, legally bound, and entirely socially exiled. The toxic branch of the family tree had been permanently amputated. 2 months later, I hosted a much smaller, far more intimate dinner at my own apartment. My health had completely returned, my lungs clear, and my energy boundless. I had spent the weekend cooking a massive, complex Italian feast, a quiet homage to the Tuscan vacation I had been denied, but on my own terms. The dining table was filled with laughter, the clinking of silverware, and the warm, genuine energy of people who loved each other. Olivia was seated to my right, engaged in a passionate debate about structural load-bearing walls with one of my cousins. Uncle Thomas sat at the head of the table, pouring wine and telling outrageous stories from his youth. As the evening wound down and people migrated to the living room for coffee, Uncle Thomas stayed behind in the dining room with me. I was quietly clearing the plates, feeling a deep, abiding sense of contentment in my chest. "This was a wonderful dinner, Riley," Uncle Thomas said gently, picking up a stack of plates to help me. He paused, looking at me with a soft, proud smile. "You look different. You look lighter." "I feel lighter," I admitted, turning to face him, leaning back against the edge of the dining table. "For the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations. I'm just carrying my own." He set the plates down and stepped closer, pulling me into a warm, paternal hug. "You have always been the strongest person in this family. We were just too blind to see it. I am so sorry we didn't protect you when you were younger. But I promise you, from now on, this family protects its own. Real family, that is." "Thank you, Uncle Thomas," I whispered, resting my chin on his shoulder, feeling a profound sense of healing wash over me. The wounds of the past decade were finally closing, leaving behind smooth, resilient scars. I had spent my life as an architect, designing strong, beautiful structures for other people to live in. But it had taken a betrayal, a bout of pneumonia, and a moment of absolute clarity to realize that I needed to design a strong, beautiful life for myself. I had laid a new foundation. One built on mutual respect, hard work, and unyielding boundaries. I had cleared out the rot, fortified the walls, and finally, my house was entirely my own.